You ever carry a sentence in your bones? Not a threat, not a curse, just a quiet sentence someone said to you once, like they were doing you a favour, but it carved something into you so deep it never fully healed. Mine came wrapped in a coffee mug and a half smile. I was 19. Standing on the porch of my parents' house in my freshly pressed cadet blues. The morning sun caught the silver buttons like medals, and I remember thinking, this is it, this is the day they finally see me. My father, Douglas Rourke, retired Air Force colonel, stepped out with a steaming mug and handed it to me like it was part of some unspoken ceremony, and then he said it. Sweetheart, not everyone's meant to be exceptional. Some of us are here to support the ones who are. No sarcasm, no cruelty, just a matter-of-fact delivery like a mechanic explaining how a car part works. I smiled. I actually smiled. But something inside me cracked, and that crack never quite healed. It just got quieter, like a leak you stop noticing until the house floods. We were a military family, but not the kind you see in feel-good reunion videos. Our walls were covered in shadow boxes, not baby pictures. There were medals, framed commendations, a folded flag from my grandfather's casket, and silence. So much silence. My mother, Miriam, served as a combat medic in Desert Storm. She didn't tell bedtime stories. She recited field protocols. My little sister Bethany? Oh, she was born for this world. Blonde, sharp, charming in that polished officer way. She could fold a uniform blindfolded and give a 3-minute speech that'd make you cry and stand at attention. And me? I was the one who read manuals under the covers, who memorized formations not because I wanted approval, but because I wanted to matter. I thought maybe if I earned my place the right way, I'd finally unlock the version of family I'd seen in TV shows. Laughter, backyard barbecues, someone asking, "How was your day?" So when I got into the academy, I didn't tell anyone right away. I waited until my acceptance packet came, just to prove it. I laid the letter down on the dinner table like a trophy. Bethany barely looked up from her salad. My mum said, "That's nice," like I'd told her I found $5 in a coat pocket. My dad nodded, no hug, no handshake, just don't make the family look soft. I kept telling myself it was just tough love, that I was being too sensitive, that some families showed love with silence and structure. But you know what I've learned watching revenge stories? It's not always about getting even. Sometimes it's about getting seen. That first year at the academy was brutal, physically, mentally, emotionally, but I held on to one thing, the idea that once I graduated, once I walked across that stage in full dress uniform, my parents would come. They'd sit front row, they'd stand for the anthem, they'd clap, but they didn't. They sent a congratulatory email. No signature, no emojis, no "we're proud of you." It read like a shipping confirmation. My roommate's parents brought a handmade banner and tear-streaked cheeks. Mine? Radio silence. I remember walking back to my dorm alone, watching other cadets hug their mums, high-five their dads, take photos that would end up framed above fireplaces. And me? I took a selfie with a vending machine in the background, just to prove I existed. That summer, I came home for a weekend. Bethany had just been accepted into officer candidate school, and there was a small celebration, cake, balloons, the works. I wore my cadet jacket, sat at the edge of the room, smiled when appropriate, spoke when spoken to. No one asked about training, no one mentioned graduation. At one point, a family friend asked who I was. Bethany said, "Oh, that's Lynn. She's in admin stuff now, I think." I wasn't even offended. I was tired. That night, I folded the jacket back into my suitcase like it was evidence in a trial I never got to testify at. The thing about being left out isn't that it happens once. It's that it keeps happening again and again in smaller and smaller ways until you start editing yourself out too. You stop calling, stop offering, stop hoping. But somewhere deep down, there's still a spark, a whisper that says, "Maybe someday." And I carried that whisper for 20 years. I'm telling you this not because I want pity, but because if you've ever felt invisible around the people who were supposed to love you the loudest, I see you, and I need you to know. Sometimes the loudest revenge isn't vengeance. It's being everything they said you couldn't be, and walking into the room so silently. They have no choice but to stop and stare. It started with a slideshow, a harmless, well-meaning, stupid little slideshow at my mom's 65th birthday party. The kind of party that required a rented tent and Costco trays the size of bathtubs. Extended family flew in. There was an actual seating chart. Someone, probably my cousin Rachel, put together a digital photo reel called Miriam Through the Years. It was set to some soft piano instrumental that tried a little too hard to make everything seem warm and nostalgic. First slide, baby photos. Then high school graduation, wedding day, new house, first baby, and on and on. Bethany showed up in nearly every frame. Her first tooth, her first medal, her first apartment. Bethany holding the family dog. Bethany on my dad's shoulders. Bethany in uniform, smiling like an ad for the army. And me, there was one photo, one West Point summer program, 2004. I was 19. You could barely see my face. And I'd been cropped, neatly, casually, like someone had trimmed the edge of a memory to make it fit the screen. When I asked my aunt about it later, she shrugged and said, "We just needed it to fit the frame." I didn't say anything, just nodded, but I felt it, that familiar twinge, the quiet ache that hums just under your ribs when you realize you were part of something once, and then somewhere along the way you weren't. Not loudly, not dramatically, just edited out. Have you ever felt that? Not yelled at, not cut off in a screaming match, but just erased. Like your story didn't match the version of family someone else had already written, so they quietly removed you. No one tells you they're doing it. They just stop asking, stop including. And suddenly you go from being a daughter to being a vague she in conversation. I used to think maybe I was being sensitive, that maybe it wasn't on purpose. Maybe they didn't ask about my life because they didn't want to pry. Maybe they didn't know what I did because it was complicated. But deep down I knew they didn't ask because they didn't care to know, because they had already decided who I was, and anything outside of that image didn't matter. I sent my mum flowers every birthday. She never called back, not once. I sent my dad a Christmas card from a base I can't legally name. It came back, returned to sender. Wrong address, I checked. It wasn't the wrong address. Eventually they stopped adding me to the family group texts. I found out my cousin got engaged because someone tagged Bethany in the bridal shower photos. And the worst part, I kept trying, even when I knew they didn't see me, even when they introduced me to a second cousin once removed as, "This is Lynn, she used to be in the military, now she does admin stuff, I think." Like I was a side character in their lives, a blurry memory they couldn't fully place, a name they couldn't confidently say out loud. And look, I know this isn't unique. I know I'm not the only one who's felt this kind of invisible. But if you're watching this and you've ever found yourself sitting in a room full of people who are supposed to love you, and somehow you still feel like a stranger, yeah, I feel you. You don't have to explain it. You don't even have to comment anything long, just write, "That was me. That's enough. I'll know exactly what you mean." One time I drove 10 hours home for Thanksgiving. No one knew I was coming. I wanted it to be a surprise. I walked through the front door, same beige siding, same creaky porch swing, and my mom was setting the table. She looked up and said, "Oh, you're here." That was it. No hug, no smile, just, "Oh, you're here." I ended up eating in the kitchen while everyone else laughed around the big table. And I wish I could tell you that was the moment I finally stood up for myself, that I packed my bags and never came back. But I didn't. I stayed. I smiled. I helped wash dishes, because part of me still thought, maybe if I showed up enough times they'd finally see me. Spoiler, they didn't. Years later, when Bethany got promoted to major, my parents threw a whole celebration, banner, custom cake, printed invites. When I finished my first black site field rotation, I got a text from my dad. "Cool, stay safe." Spelled my name wrong. The thing about being left out by strangers is whatever, right? But being left out by people who should have known your middle name. That kind of rejection hits different. It doesn't bruise, it sinks, and it stays. I used to wonder what it would take for them to finally see me. Turns out, it wasn't medals, it wasn't rank, it wasn't years of service, it was something else entirely. But that part, that came later. And when it did, let's just say the entire room stopped breathing. The invitation didn't say, "We'd love to see you." It didn't say, "It would mean a lot to Bethany if you came." It said, "Bethany's promotion ceremony is Friday at Aero 900. If attending, please dress appropriately and do not disrupt the program." I read it twice. Then again. No "Hi, Lynn," no "Hope you've been well," just rules, expectations. It read like an HR memo, like I was being invited not as a sister, but as a potential security risk. Still, I packed a bag. Not because I expected warmth, not because I believed my parents had changed, but because some part of me, some exhausted, bruised, traitorous part, still needed to know if I stood quietly in front of them, after all these years, would they even recognize me anymore? I drove 10 hours straight, same cracked highway, same rest stop coffee, same stretch of pine trees that used to feel like home. When I pulled up to the house, nothing had changed. Same beige siding, same dent in the mailbox, same American flag flapping from the porch like a memory that wouldn't come down. Inside, it smelled like lemon polish and old pride, military order, stale distance. My mother was at the dining room table arranging place cards. She didn't look up. "Go change. You're sitting next to Bethany tomorrow. Please don't interrupt her speech." That was my welcome. Not even a glance. No. "Hi, sweetheart." No. "You look well." Just instructions, like I was part of the decor. My father came in a few minutes later. He looked me up and down once, nodded like he was inspecting a fence post, and said, "Good you made it." His eyes had already moved past me before I could even answer. That night, I laid awake in the old guest room, same quilt, same closet with old board games, same silence pressing against the walls like humidity. I didn't unpack the dress uniform I brought. Instead, I chose a plain blouse and slacks. Quiet clothes for a quiet ghost. The next morning we drove to Fort Archer. Big auditorium, polished floors, flags in perfect symmetry, rows of metal chairs arranged with bureaucratic precision. My name wasn't on any seat. Instead, I was directed, politely, firmly, to the third row from the back. A taped label on the chair said, "Family, unassigned." A subtle message, "You're here." But not really. Up front, Bethany gleamed in her uniform, shoulders square, jaw set, every medal aligned. She had the look of someone who'd rehearsed every second in the mirror, humble enough to seem likeable, confident enough to seem deserving. When she took the podium, I expected nerves, a pause, maybe even a mention of those who helped her. Nope. She launched straight in. Service, honor, duty, perseverance. All the right words in the right order. She spoke like a press release, like a campaign, like someone who knew she was being filmed. At one point, she looked back and said, "To my parents, your legacy is my foundation. To my mentors, you shaped the leader I am today. And to those in uniform who inspire me daily, you are the reason I strive for excellence." I waited for a glance, a nod, a breath of recognition, but nothing came. I was a shadow in the back row. Even my chair didn't have my name. After the ceremony, we gathered in the reception hall. White tablecloths, plastic wine flutes, everyone in formation, even the conversations felt rehearsed. My mum floated through the room like a hostess. Bethany posed with colleagues and relatives like it was a wedding. Eventually, I ended up near a group of old family friends. Bethany gestured toward me and said, "This is my sister Lynn. She was in the military for a while. I think she works in admin now." Someone chuckled. Not maliciously. Just in that polite social way people laugh when they're not sure if they're supposed to. A distant cousin leaned over and said, "VA office, right? Better than nothing." I didn't answer, didn't smile. I've learnt silence has its own kind of dignity. especially when the truth wouldn't matter. Later, in the restroom, I caught my reflection in the mirror. Same eyes, same tired lines, same forced composure, and I thought, this is what it looks like to be edited out of your own life, while everyone else celebrates the version they prefer. You ever been there? Not the yelling, not the slammed doors, but the dinner parties where your name gets skipped, the family gatherings where you're technically included, but spiritually erased? It's quiet, but it cuts just the same. And if you're still watching this and this moment hits a little too close, just know you're not the only one sitting in that unassigned chair. I've been there, and I promise you, it doesn't end here. The thing about being invisible is you start expecting nothing. So when I walked into that auditorium, I didn't plan to take up space. I didn't bring a speech. I didn't wear my uniform. I didn't even wear mascara. I just showed up. The lights were too bright, the air conditioning too strong. I sat stiff in my family unassigned seat, right next to someone's cousin and a woman who wore far too much perfume. I folded my hands in my lap and fixed my eyes straight ahead like a civilian watching a ceremony they weren't invited to, but somehow wandered into. Bethany stood on stage, already mid-sentence, already soaking in the pride radiating off my parents. They sat front and centre, of course, Mum in pearls, Dad with his jaw clenched just enough to appear stoic but invested. Classic. Bethany's voice carried through the room like it was built for this kind of echo. Leadership isn't about titles, it's about legacy, about carrying forward the honour of those who came before you. She said it like she believed it, like she had carried anyone but herself. She didn't glance at me once, and I didn't expect her to. But then the door opened, and the sound of boots on linoleum cut through her speech like a blade. One pair, precise, heavy, unhurried. People turned. A few straightened instinctively in their chairs the way military folk do when someone of authority walks in, even before they know who it is. And then he appeared, General Mitchell Dyer, full dress uniform, silver stars gleaming under fluorescence, rows of commendations across his chest like history stitched into fabric. The room didn't gasp. It didn't need to. It just froze. Bethany paused mid-sentence. Her note card trembled in her hand. My parents sat upright, stiff with recognition. And me? I didn't move. I couldn't even breathe. Because General Dyer wasn't scanning the stage. He wasn't looking at Bethany. He was walking, steadily, purposefully, toward me. He stopped right in front of my row, raised his hand, and saluted. Not some casual nod, not a ceremonial courtesy, a full, sharp, regulation salute. "General Rourke, ma'am, it's an honour." Every eye in the room snapped to me, every neck turned. I stood, slow, deliberate, returned the salute without flinching. My fingers didn't shake, my posture didn't falter, because when someone who once trusted you with 30 lives in a country that doesn't officially exist salutes you in public, you don't shrink, you rise. From the corner of my eye, I saw my mother's glass slip from her hand. The shatter echoed louder than the applause that followed. My father stood halfway as if caught in the muscle memory of respecting rank, then sat back down like the air had been punched out of him. "Bethany?" Bethany stared at me like she was seeing a ghost. And maybe she was. Because for years, I'd been the version of me they preferred. Forgettable, non-threatening, neatly labelled admin. But that day, under the harsh lights of Fort Archer's main hall, I wasn't forgettable. I wasn't optional. I was the woman they'd spent 2 decades editing out, now standing centre frame, saluted by a man they all admired. And I didn't say a word. Didn't explain. Didn't boast. Because I didn't owe them the truth. Not anymore. What? After the salute, General Dyer handed me a folder. I took it quietly. Inside, documents stamped with official seals, classified labels blacked out. I didn't need to open it. I already knew what it was. They didn't, but they would. The reception afterward felt like walking through smoke. No one quite knew what to say. Suddenly, I wasn't just Bethany's sister anymore. I was General Lynn Rourke. People whispered, some stared, someone even asked for a photo. I declined. My parents didn't approach me, not even to ask how, not even to say my name. Bethany hovered near the punch table, face flushed, pretending not to look over every 5 seconds. She didn't come say anything either, but I caught her watching me, like she was trying to calculate how she'd missed it, how the girl in the shadows turned into the one commanding the light. You ever have a moment where you realize they only loved you when you were small enough not to challenge them? Yeah, that was mine. And it didn't feel like revenge. It felt like gravity shifting back to where it always should have been. If you've been waiting for your moment, your version of the door opening, the boots echoing, the hush falling over a room that once erased you, just know it's coming. Maybe not like this. Maybe not in uniform. But the day will come when someone walks in and the people who made you feel like nothing will have to look again. And this time, they won't be able to look away. That night, I didn't go back to my parents' house. I checked into a standard military guest quarter, no frills, beige walls, sheets too thin, a desk that still smelled like disinfectant, the kind of place meant for short stays and short memories. I dropped my bag on the floor, kicked off my shoes, and sat down in the chair. That's when I saw it. A manila envelope. No name, no note, just sitting there. Placed like a message meant for someone who'd know exactly what it meant. I opened it. Inside, a printout of an old email. Subject line: reckless operation, civilian risk, confidential report. It was vague, purposefully so. 3 paragraphs long, just enough innuendo to sound legitimate, just enough false detail to trigger a flag in the system. I'd seen it before. This email, or some version of it, almost got me pulled from an overseas op 2 years ago. I was quietly rerouted to an assignment in northern Syria. The terrain was unstable. The intel was incomplete. 2 of my men died. I came home with shrapnel in my thigh that still throbs when it rains. We never found out who'd triggered the investigation, until now, because this time the printout wasn't redacted, the metadata hadn't been scrubbed, IP address, login credential, Bethany Rourke, sent 2 days before my deployment from a laptop linked to her personal account. I didn't feel shock, not anger, just stillness, like a room after an explosion before the dust settles. The next day, after the reception, I found her alone behind the venue. She was scrolling her phone, makeup flawless, smile still fresh from the attention. I stepped in front of her and held out the envelope. She looked at it. Her eyes scanned the top of the page. Her jaw tightened, but she didn't deny it. She didn't even blink. "You sent this?" I asked. She nodded. Once. Small. Like it didn't matter anymore. Why? For the first time all weekend, she didn't have a rehearsed answer. Her shoulders dropped, voice low. "Because you weren't supposed to win." The words didn't come out bitter. They came out broken. You left. You disappeared. You didn't stay, didn't do it their way, and still, somehow you mattered more. She looked down, swallowed hard. "I did everything right. I followed every rule. I stayed. And they still talked about you like you were some legend, like you could do no wrong. I couldn't stand it." I stared at her, not with hate, not even disappointment, just the kind of quiet that happens when you realize someone you loved the version of you that lost. "You didn't kill me, Bethany," I said. She looked up. "But you pushed me into a place people don't usually come back from." Her mouth opened like she wanted to say, "I'm sorry," but no words came. "I didn't think it would go that far," she whispered. "That's the thing," I replied. "You didn't want to know." There was no fight, no dramatic screaming. I didn't tear up. She didn't chase after me. I just turned and walked away, envelope in hand. And for the first time in years, my heart felt quiet. Not healed, but quieter. Because betrayal doesn't always come in explosions. Sometimes it comes in whispers, in the click of a keyboard, in a sister's silence. I used to think the worst pain was being forgotten. It's not. It's being remembered just enough for someone to try and erase you for real. You ever been betrayed by someone who knew exactly what you'd already survived and still chose to twist the knife? I don't need details. You don't have to type out the whole story. But if this hit somewhere you didn't expect, just let me know with one word, still here. That's all. I'll see it, and I'll know exactly what you mean. A month after the ceremony, I sent 3 emails. No subject line, no explanation, just a time, a place, and the word dinner. It was the same house I grew up in, same driveway where I scraped my knees learning to ride a bike, same porch swing that creaked under the weight of long summers and longer silences. I arrived early, set the table myself, 6 plates, no name cards, no candles, just a rotisserie chicken and a bottle of wine that had lived too long on clearance shelves. This wasn't about presentation, it was about presence. My mother walked in first, casserole dish in foil, clutched like a peace offering wrapped in guilt. My father followed, hands in his pockets, eyes scanning the room like a stranger in a museum that used to be his. Bethany came last. Her smile was careful, measured, like a kid walking into a room where they might still be grounded. We sat, no one toasted, no one prayed, we just started eating. I let the clinking forks fill the first 10 minutes, let the weight of unspoken things settle into the carpet and the air, then I spoke. I didn't call this dinner for apologies, I said. I called it to tell the truth, just once, out loud. They looked up, no one interrupted. I didn't quit the academy. I was recruited, quietly, into a division that doesn't send graduation photos, doesn't list names, doesn't make Facebook posts. I spent 6 months underground coordinating a hostage extraction you'll never read about. I've given orders I still lose sleep over, but they saved lives, 3 dozen to be exact. I don't say that for applause, I say it because you never asked. My mother blinked hard. My father's hands folded tighter. Bethany stared at her plate like it might open and swallow her whole. Then he said it. "Why didn't you ever tell us?" And I laughed. Not cruelly, but like someone exhaling after holding her breath for 20 years, because you never would have believed me. I reached into my bag and placed the manila envelope on the table, the one with Bethany's email, the one that nearly got me killed. I slid it across, not accusingly, just honestly. I didn't keep this to hold it over you. I kept it to remind myself how easily we can hurt each other when we stop seeing. Bethany didn't speak, but her hand reached out, rested gently on mine. No apology, just weight, just presence, and for once that was enough. Before they left, my dad wandered toward the mantel, picked up an old family photo from years back, one of those beach trips we took before everything fractured. He looked at it a long time. "This one's missing someone," he said quietly. Then he set it down. "Maybe next time we take a new one." That night, I didn't cry, didn't write about it, didn't replay it in my head over and over like I used to with their silences. I just washed the dishes, turned out the light, slept better than I had in years. Because sometimes closure doesn't come with apologies. Sometimes it comes when you finally take up the space they told you wasn't yours. A week later, I got a call from General Dyer. "The Freedom Valor Initiative just finalized the board," he said. "We want you to oversee it, name it, run it." I told him I wasn't sure I was the right face. "Lynn," he said, "you already are. Everyone else is just catching up." So we named it Rorke's Line, not for me, but for everyone who ever sat in the family unassigned row, for every daughter who folded napkins, sent cards, showed up, and got cropped out of the slideshow anyway. If you've ever felt that, if you've ever watched people smile through a version of you that wasn't real, if you've ever had to shrink to keep peace at a table that never really had room for you, I see you. And if this story hit something in you, you don't have to explain. You don't have to write your whole story. Just drop 2 words in the comments. Still here. I'll read them, all of them, every single one, because I know what it means to stay.